right. Hello, everyone. I'm
Good
so
morning.
excited for this conversation. For those of you that don't know, my name is Andi, and I'm here with Dr. Dickerson. And this has been a long time coming of just a conversation where we wanted to kind of share our stories about how we got into the fields that we're in and kind of what we see with patients right now, especially in the holistic and integrative world. And yeah, just wanted to open this up to a public conversation. Hopefully this will be one of many. Um, but to give you some background on me first, I am a nurse, but I ended up going from pretty quickly after nursing school from conventional medicine to more integrative. I worked at an integrative practice for a long time, and now I am working on my own with patients, trying to do preventative lifestyle and diet and just trying to get back to our roots, which me and Dr. D are very passionate about for all of our patients. And yeah, I think that's kind of one of the most important things, but I'll go more into my story in a little bit. But Dr. Dickerson, if you want to introduce yourself and a little bit of your background.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Dickerson, and I have the pleasure of meeting Andi, maybe 2 years ago when she and her husband came in as patients. And we just had one of those experiences where once we started to get to know one another, we just hit the ground running with so many common thought processes and philosophies about health. But I am a biological dentist. So that is something maybe not everybody has been introduced to, but it is a different focus in the world of dentistry, moving a little bit away from some traditionally accepted practices related especially to potential toxicities in the oral environment, potential material sensitivities or materials toxicities of what's commonly used in dentistry. And our patients tend to come in already many times on a health journey, and they're starting to look to their mouth for potential root causes of health issues, or they're just looking to optimize their health, and they are learning how important oral health is to their overall health. I also have quite a emphasis on the balance of the jaw joint and the bite. And I've found that stabilizing factor can be really critical for people as they're trying to, again, reach optimal health. People suffer from headaches, jaw pain, wearing their teeth down. So that's another big element of my practice. And I would say another defining characteristic is using minimally invasive techniques for restoring teeth. So less grinding, more building up, more strengthening teeth in other ways. So that's kind of the broad brush of my field in biological dentistry. I would say just real, so not, a quick little summary. I got into it partly, honestly, because my father was my first mentor. We worked together for many years, and he had a very holistic and progressive view about health for the era that he was practicing in. I don't know what made the community consider him a holistic dentist in the 1960s and 70s, but maybe he was just kind of a hippie and thought about things more holistically in his life and with his patients. But my journey into it really started with becoming toxic with heavy metals, especially mercury. So that relates to the mercury silver fillings that were being commonly used in that time period. And I just got too much of a total load in my system, became quite sick as a young mom. And it took a while to figure out what was wrong. And finally, in the 1990s, found a doctor who helped me identify that I had high levels of mercury in my bloodstream. And then we started working to get that cleared out. And that just started me on a whole pathway.
I love it.
Yeah. So I found that, Andi, a lot of people get into more specialized fields for the health of themselves or a family member or both.
Yeah.
That's
And
certainly the case in my story.
yeah. And I think kind of just giving you guys a personal look too of how I even found Dr. Dickerson. It was in our culture today and in conventional medicine, we have so much separation, which Dr. D and I have talked a lot about of, there's an eye doctor, there's a podiatrist, there's a dentist,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all connected. And I work with a lot of patients on gut health, specifically because gut is typically the root, and it's just probably one of the simplest manifestations or first manifestations that come up for people. But even when I was having obviously teeth issues at the time, but the reason why I found her and was so drawn to her was because she was asking me in the intake form all about my health, because my mouth isn't separate from my gut. And you can speak to this more, but how the oral microbiome and the gut microbiome connect, but then how it doesn't stop there. And I think, unfortunately, in our culture, we think that it stops there. And that honestly does make me a little bit sad, because one system cannot, yes, there's possibilities of where it can be isolated or something like that, but it's very rare that it's not affecting other organ systems. And I think that's, kind of why both of us went on this journey. And again, with our own health issues, but even for me in conventional medicine, I didn't know how to articulate it, and sometimes I still don't, but I knew something was missing. I knew there was gaps,
Mm-hmm.
and there were gaps, and that is what really got me questioning. I'm like, wait a minute, but if A plus B equals C, then what about, why are we doing Z plus W equals 2 or something like that?
Right.
So yeah, so I don't know if you want to speak more to that too, of just that connection and that integration of how you've done that so well in your practice and just in your personal life as well.
Yeah, thank you. That is really the theme of the story, I think, for both of us. And a lot of times the medical and dental communities have been taught in schooling for their specific silo of information. Although dental students do pretty much share the same as the medical students those first 2 years with all the microbiology, and the biochemistry and all that. But as soon as we start learning how to fix teeth and diagnose dental things, it just becomes almost like its own little separate bubble.
Mhm.
And I think I love the fact that we're starting to, maybe there's this trend with integrative health to pull the body parts back together,
Mhm.
because it is an entire whole integrated system. And as much as we might try to just stay in our lane, as a practitioner who's licensed for certain procedures and certain diagnoses, I have learned it really can help accelerate people's outcomes when we are at least acknowledging the entire body.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
this is why I set up my practice here in Denver, because I have a really amazing network of practitioners like Andi and other functional medicine oriented nutritionists and physicians. And sometimes they would be in the field of chiropractic or acupuncture.
Mhm.
And many times people come in, they already have these practitioners, and those people can really be helpful as we start making decisions about how to proceed with their dentistry. What's the best timing? How is this going to fit with the other things they're working on in their health? What's the optimal time to address things that might result in an influx of toxicity into the bloodstream, like removing old mercury fillings, for example? That
Mhm.
is something we do with all of the certification and safe protocols. I had to learn how to do that if I wanted to still practice,
Mhm.
but it's still something to consider in the context of somebody's overall health.
Mhm.
So whatever's happening in how we all view the human body and its connection to itself and to the community around us and to the earth, and just looking at it from a literally holistic perspective,
Mhm.
that's where I've evolved into, and it to me it just brings a lot more satisfaction and better outcomes for people. So,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so I guess one of the things that too that we could get in and get into for people is, just kind of what we're hearing in our practices
mhm,
individually, and then what's kind of overlapping for us right now.
mhm.
So also to give you background, mine has recently shifted. I am 8 months pregnant, so
Yay.
so a lot of my like questions are pregnancy, prenatal health, and but again, that's going into kind of gut health and hormones prior to that, and still that's
Mhm.
still ongoing. Again, it's a whole system, right?
Right.
So, so yeah, so what I hear a lot about is gut health. That is, I feel like for my generation, tons and tons of people are having gut health issues.
Mhm.
And there's also tons of marketing around that with take this supplement and then your gut is
Mhm.
healed. So do you see that a lot in your practice as well with more of your generation or yeah, maybe fill us in a little bit and then we can expand.
That is a, excuse me, it's definitely a common denominator. And I've noticed, because I have patients of all ages, but it does tend to maybe group into my generation. I'm kind of on the late end of baby boomer, which
Mhm,
would have probably grown up with a really standard American diet for the most part. But
mhm,
now I see an influx of people that come in your age group who are maybe in their 20s and 30s. And there's a common thread of people really trying to balance out their digestion and their gut health. And it's astounding how many times, even though most people that I see have been engaged in regular dental care,
mhm,
traditional dental care, every 6 month cleanings, quick checkups, they still have oftentimes microbes in their mouth that are causing inflammation in the gum tissues or causing ongoing cavities. And if we haven't identified it specifically, we it's an ongoing issue for them. And for sure, when those microbes are in the oral environment, they're being swallowed, they're affecting the rest of the digestive tract,
yeah.
and vice versa. If there's dysbiosis in lower areas of the digestive tract, it's going to affect the oral environment.
Mhm.
So it's really ideal when we can tackle it from both sides.
Yeah. So going off of that, and this is honestly
Mhm.
just even a personal question for me, but I'm sure other people will relate.
Mhm.
Like, what do you see from your lens of
Mhm.
dentistry, especially because again, gut and, I obviously am not looking at in any of my patients' mouths, but
Right.
or even talking to them, really, I have incorporated some oral hygiene questions since working with you and getting to know you.
Yeah.
Um, but what do you think, like in our culture, our modern day culture, what do you think are the big contributors to that? Of, like, is it coffee? Is it processed foods? I mean, obviously, processed foods play a part in it, but even
Mhm.
sugars, or is it how much does stress have to do with it? Like, what do you think is kind of the catalyst, or are there several that are contributing to
Mhm.
my generation and this even younger generation that's coming up behind me
Mhm.
of gut health, oral issues, and all, and then again going to other body systems.
Yeah, it's probably all those things you mentioned, but some things that I'm noticing as real touch points more recently. It's the diet has shifted. I think a lot of people are becoming aware of staying away from processed foods and trying to eat more of a balanced diet. I'd say most people come in, they're already on an organic food source. They're eating high quality meats. What I think is layered over the top is what we know feeds the pretty much the harmful microbes in the mouth is high carbohydrate
Mm,
foods that
mhm,
fuel off of that, especially. And that can be in the form of a lot of plants,
mhm,
a lot of grains. Um, so, yes, of course, obviously, sugars
mhm,
and sweets and those things, I think, is kind of almost a given. But
yeah.
when we go a little bit deeper, what I see just dietarily, people seem to get an improvement when they start toning down their balance away from so
Mm,
many carbohydrates towards more protein and high quality fats,
mhm,
um, along with good education on oral hygiene.
mm,
It's 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 still a fundamental part of my role is to help people learn how to care for their own mouth.
mhm,
And again, it's sometimes discouraging for people because they've been going to the dentist and they have probably been feeling like that should keep them healthy. But why are they still having bleeding gums? Why are they still having cavities pop up?
Yeah.
And so we walk through some salivary testing, which can be really helpful to identify which exact bacteria related to gum inflammation or decay are present. And we can target those with different products and treatments and really damp down that harmful bacteria. And
Hmm.
then the diets that are rich in, nutrient dense foods help feed the good bacteria. And you can really just see it in the tissues in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
And I feel like the mouth is a window to the body. It is, you can see a lot about somebody's total health just by our oral exam. And so to shine a light on that for people and have them tune in to, okay, what's happening in this part of my body?
Hmm.
How can I impact it?
Yeah.
I have found that a lot of people haven't really seen what's in their mouth. And it's hard because you can't really see it in a mirror. You don't know what you're looking at.
Hmm.
So, a great part of our initial exam is just to help people tune in,
Hmm.
show pictures, talk it through, look
Yeah.
at what's present, and then start saying, okay, now what are my goals? What do I really want to do here?
Yeah.
Um, so the way that it connects to the whole body, I don't even know if we can possibly understand the complexity of it.
Hmm.
But then when they get into the hands of someone like you and start balancing out um, all the other input to their system, we
Hmm.
start seeing really miraculous results for people and how they feel and how
Yeah.
they're. But I'd be interested in your perspective on what stressors
Hmm.
are you seeing that you think really affect people's total health?
Yeah. Yeah, everything. But
Yeah.
I do think, and I love that, and I want to touch on the nutrient dense foods too, because I think what I keep hearing from, even just family members and close friends, and I have been in this boat, we've kind of talked about this too, of just giving you guys a little background. The When you are learning about health and when you're really on a holistic journey, you can be down the rabbit hole and taken by the wayside because
Mm-hmm.
like the veil is uncovered, right? And there's so much, there's different things. There's certain things that are more expensive. There's certain things that are just even overwhelming. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
videos trending on TikTok and Instagram right now where it's like a bunch of clips of people saying like, don't eat eggs, don't drink water, don't do this. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of stressors, I think, unfortunately, there's just a lot because of our technology today. We aren't in nature as much as we once were. That's a big thing that I
Mm-hmm.
work with clients of
Yeah.
getting them outside, getting them in the sunshine, fresh air, because we are spending, I think the current study says like 97% of our day inside, which is
Wow.
wild. And then when you compare that to several different times in history, different periods, but even
Mm-hmm.
50 years ago, that is a drastic increase, even
Mm-hmm.
for, you know, when people were working all the time. So that's a big one. But I also think in terms of stress, like a lot of people say, oh, I don't feel stressed. But there's chemical stressors, there's, heavy metals like you're mentioning in
Mm-hmm.
our, unfortunately, in our food and our water and just different things, or just, yeah, how we grew up. We didn't question anything. So if you have fillings and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
um, then in our products, self-care products have a lot.
Yeah.
Um, One thing, we're not going to get into it, but in Europe, there's like over 600, I think probably more than that at this point, but over 600 chemicals that are banned in their personal care products,
Mm-hmm.
that are not banned in the US. So they have reproductive health issues. They have tons of endocrine, which is hormone disrupting chemicals and compounds. But then there's also physical stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what your job is, or even sitting at a desk all day can be
Sure.
technically physical stress and a physical load on your
Mm-hmm.
body. And then there's that emotional and mental, right? But I think one of the things that I see often too is I'll ask people, oh, what's your stress level? And they'll say, 5 out of 10. But then when we start to get into it, they have no time for themselves. They
Mm-hmm.
aren't, they are running on fumes. But we're very complex, and we can establish a new baseline for ourselves, whether that's good or bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm talking to clients about, their stress levels 5 out of 10, but then I'm kind of reading it back to them, they're like, oh, wow, that's pretty bad, And again,
Right.
it's multifaceted. It's not just one thing. It's not
Sure.
just work. Um, but I think the balance in that culture, or our culture, is just tough to find, because it's honestly like you don't have to do everything at once, which we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about. And kind of to touch on the nutrient dense foods that you're talking about, I think
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the best places to start, because in the old practice that I was working in, we would tell people to kind of go on like a Whole30 or a paleo reset, which
Yeah.
is beneficial for a short period of time. It's very beneficial for the gut microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
However, that is unsustainable. There is no way you can maintain that diet without changing, some quality of life, some social events,
Mm-hmm.
and all these other things that you're trying to do. So, what I try to tell people is kind of like you said, just more of the good stuff. So, more
Mm-hmm.
fruits and veggies, more organic, or not even organic, but grass-fed meats,
Mm-hmm.
high quality fats, raw cheddar. We demonize a lot of these things,
Mm-hmm.
like the fats especially, but those are so good for our brain health. Those are so good for
Mm-hmm.
reproductive, especially if you're a woman and trying to conceive or trying to get pregnant. That's a whole nother thing. But once I tell people, increase water, increase protein, and
Mm-hmm.
fats, there's not a lot of room left for those processed foods. So
Right.
that's where I've geared towards now more. And I know we've talked about, different diets. We've tried everything under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're interested. We're interested in the health.
Right. It's
Um,
kind of a hobby.
yeah, exactly. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting of like, let's see how this makes us feel. But I think I've finally gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, whole foods, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
can pick it, grow it, or kill it, then
Yeah.
that is what we should primarily be eating. Like
I love
basic,
that.
you know, did God make this, or was it made in a factory, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is a is a good rule of thumb for me and some of
Mm-hmm.
my clients. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you want to expand on that too, of, just even your history of different diets and different things and
Mm-hmm.
density, how to get it all in.
Yeah, it's so cool to talk because I like looking at trends and I don't have like data. This is my own anecdotal observation based on
Yeah.
who comes in. What I'm seeing a lot lately is people, especially women, who've been very diligent about what they knew about health. Some of them are triathlon performers for many years' time.
Mm,
Or else they're just really into running and walking, and maybe they're in their 40s or 50s. Um, and they've kept a lean body mass. Um, but I find that sometimes their overall energy and sense of health is declining, where they feel like, I live so healthy, I should be feeling awesome.
mhm,
And then when they start getting in with a functional medicine doctor and we start looking at the oral environment, it seems like there is maybe an overstress.
mhm,
And these might be high performing people in life. So, like you say, they spread themselves really thin. They're controlling their diet with what they thought they knew. That might have been the trend 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But what it seems that is helping people actually get things balanced is more of an emphasis on animal fats,
mhm,
cholesterol being a huge building block for all hormones, and sort of a trend away from this constant fear about fat and cholesterol, realizing that it's inherent in some of the best foods we have on the planet. That shift with some guidance and counseling from their doctors can help them start feeling better. But also, it's amazing to me when they start caring for their mouth more, like
mhm,
that athlete that they are. There's like Andy, it's the weirdest thing. I've termed it in my own mind as somebody's oral self-esteem.
mm,
So there's sometimes almost they either have evidence or they just know that things aren't healthy in
Mhm.
their mouth. They can just feel it. That's why they come in, even though they've been going to the dentist. And when we give them the tools to really take control of that, and they can see an impact very quickly and just look in their mouth and feel the difference, that not only does that have an impact for their health, but for their sense of taking control.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I think sometimes the stresses that we've kind of fallen into
Mhm.
in terms of all the different roles we play, the different hats we wear, running around, doing so many activities, trying to maintain our health, trying to
Mhm.
stay up to date on current events, trying to help our family have good health. The social media thing is, God, I don't know in our lifetime if we're going to figure out the right balance, but it's obviously a wonderful tool. You and I are sitting here with the hopes to share some information
Mhm.
on social media, right?
Right.
But you've got to put some guardrails on it for all of us, or it can just be all consuming and then cause more stress.
Mhm.
Have you were telling me before, but have you and your husband done certain things to mitigate that influence in your lives as a couple?
Yeah, he's never on social media, so he
Oh,
does.
well, that's good.
Yeah. I feel I actually, it's funny that you bring this up because I literally just got back on Instagram after 2 weeks of just deleting it. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know
Yeah.
how long I was going to. I didn't even make it into this like big thing. I was like, you know what? I just need to really guard my mind too, especially in kind of to be really transparent with pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
But that can be applied to any season. Like if you're getting married, if you're
Mm-hmm.
single, if you're, whatever, X, Y, and Z, fill in the
Mm-hmm.
blank, there can be really good information because we are what we consume. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously that's food wise, but
Sure.
that's also what we're watching, what we're listening to, who's even speaking into our lives. That's a big thing that I've noticed in pregnancy as well. Everyone loves to share their horrific birth stories or
Right.
whatever else is happening with them. But I also
Mm-hmm.
feel like that happens to some of my single girlfriends or,
Mm-hmm.
and I think kind of going back to the stress component of just how it's all integrated is, what do we need to be mindful of? Yes, it's you can food and it's your food and stuff like that, but kind of like you're talking about with some of these patients, and I've seen this too, on paper, we can be doing it all right, right? We can be eating
Mm-hmm.
whole foods, we can be working out, we can be meditating for 10 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that stuff is great, but you can still be stressed, I guess.
Right.
And you can be stressed from difficult family members. You can be stressed from
Mm-hmm.
negative friends. You can be
Mm-hmm.
stressed from your job. Maybe that's a negative environment. I'm not saying quit your job, but maybe, kind of reconfigure some of these boundaries that
Mm-hmm.
we, unfortunately, I think at least that's what's been coming up for me personally, even with deleting Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
But how are our boundaries contributing to our health? But
Yeah.
in several areas, I think we think about boundaries with like our in-laws or,
Relationships. Yeah.
yeah, right, relationships. But really, what are our boundaries in every capacity? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is our boundary with ourself and food? But again, creating enjoyment from food
Mm-hmm.
and having that social aspect of community when you're eating with people, but
Right.
also having discipline as well of, hey, I do care about myself enough to establish a healthy boundary of
Mm-hmm.
this, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Those are things that it's kind of a tangent, but I think that I just feel the stress of myself and my friends coming around and loved
Mm-hmm.
ones that are just like, where do I start? Because there's so much information and there's
Mm-hmm.
so much noise, for lack of
Right.
a better word, in our society, that what is the thing that's going to move the needle the most for my health? And I think
Mm-hmm.
there are the basics, right? Start with some of the basics, eat more real foods, drink more water. You can always start there. Those are
Mm-hmm.
great. And then like get outside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, what would you say you're like top 5 basics or 3 to 5 basics are for your clients that are coming to you? And I know they're more already on the holistic trend,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe you can speak to both parties of if they
Yeah.
are more holistic or if they're just starting on this journey.
Yeah. And we see both. Some people are encouraged by a loved one to get a different perspective on their dental health. So they're newbies to it, which is really fun.
Mhm.
And one of the things I find is really helpful that a lot of people that come in, they've really given up on traditional medicine
Mhm.
because it didn't do much for them, or it's just, a basic blood test if they're lucky.
Mhm.
So to connect them with someone like you that can start helping them really look at, some data about their health that they haven't tuned into yet, it takes it away from just being, oh, I'm trying hard and I don't do good enough. I probably could eat less sugar. Whatever their subjective, it's more of an emotional
Mhm.
battle in themselves trying to be healthy. But when we can get it down to some data and practical things to chug away at, it's going to be just like you say, um, cleaning up the quality of the food that they're eating, drinking more water. Yes, getting out into some fresh air and sunshine. That's a challenge I always have.
Mhm.
Thankfully, it's getting light out earlier in the mornings here, but now we woke up today to 4 inches of snow on April 20th. But still, it's so helpful to get out and into the bright light, helps sleep cycles. And that's also the data can be a catch 22 too. So like I have my Oura ring, I've worn it for years and years, and it's always talking to me about stress. Like
Mhm.
it's giving me, and I'm like, I'm fine. This is normal for me. Like I'm going through my work life. I'm fine, but then it's going to say, pay more time, have a little more downtime, take time to breathe, make sure you get into bed,
Mhm.
prioritize quality sleep.
Mhm.
Those seems to be messages that I can't ever hear enough of. And um, so I think the reminder for all of us that all this incoming data has to be, like you say, we have to put some boundaries around it
Mhm.
and take time to just have community and be with our families and chill out and be
Yeah.
outside. I mean, it sounds so
Simple.
almost like you shouldn't have to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, I love that you said that because to when I was working in integrated medicine, right, we were putting people on these detox protocols, which again,
Yeah.
do have a benefit. And I will say the people that were coming to us in this practice were chronic, they had these issues chronically, so long
Mm-hmm.
term. So at that point, that is what majority of them needed. They needed a full reset.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not they weren't able to have a lot of that wiggle room because their health was already in a really pivotal moment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but now, the people that are coming, somehow I always talk about poop on every podcast, but the people that are coming, they might not have a bowel movement for a week, and that's
Mm-hmm.
their norm. And they don't know that that is not healthy. And just
Right.
to fill you guys in that are listening, it isn't healthy. We should be
Mm-hmm.
detoxing every day, at least once a day. We should be
Mm-hmm.
having bowel movement, just like if you have a dog or a cat, they go to the bathroom, usually after
Mm-hmm.
a meal, honestly, for most.
Right.
And but just like even talking about these things, and for a while, when I started my own practice, I was like, wow, I feel like I need to be talking way more in depth about
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and Z, gut health, the microbiome, blah, 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 get really scientific. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
this immense pressure to look at data studies, and that's still helpful. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I think our culture is just unfortunately out of touch and
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily in tune with our own bodies. And even
Right.
getting back to that baseline is really like the first pillar of health that I would argue that people need to focus on of what do you need? Because the other thing is we usually know. Like
Mm-hmm.
once I'm asking a patient, um, what do you think you need this week? Sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
usually immediately they'll be like, I don't know, maybe this, maybe
Mm-hmm.
more of this. and it'll be like a vitamin or something. But then when you like kind of get into it, they'll be like, I need to go to bed at 9 p.m. Like I'm so
Mm-hmm.
exhausted and this is what I need. And we know, we really do.
Right.
Um, and I think that that's just so important of kind of not doubting yourself too, but
Mm-hmm.
also that there's another thing that I would love to touch on, which is superficial self-care versus actual self-care. The actual
Okay.
self-care is when we do that. We're in tune,
Mm-hmm.
we listen to our body, and we're like, you know what? I'm going to go to sleep at 9 because this is what I need to do. This is
Mm-hmm.
taking discipline for me to turn off the TV or
Mm-hmm.
phone off. So I'm going to go to sleep at 9 and do this. That's real self-care. It's taking
Mm-hmm.
some discipline, but you're actually really benefiting yourself. But then there's this world that's been created of superficial self-care, where
Okay.
it's wine and a face mask, which again
Oh.
is
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily bad, but are you moving the needle, I guess would be
Mm-hmm.
a good way to phrase it, maybe, of, or if Netflix and chill, like all these terms, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is your mind so overstimulated and so overrun with work that is watching a show, like, yes, you can kind of shut off, but it's still stimulation. It's
Right.
blue light. It's still activating your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And is it positive? Like,
Right.
what is the show feeding?
Yeah.
So I love that conversation of the two of those, that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I'd heard this past year of, wow, like once you start identifying that, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
identify what you're doing in your life that is actually caring for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or that just is kind of a band-aid that seems like you're caring for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can speak to this. I think so my age group, women, a lot of them that, they might be in the grandchildren era, but their day-to-day life has slowed down a little bit in terms of the intensity of caring for the family. So they're kind of coming up for air. It's like, now what do I do? What does my life look like now that I'm not running the kids to soccer every Saturday or whatever? Um, so I'm in that category, although my first grandbaby is going to be coming in June.
Uh,
Um,
it's so
Kind of,
fun.
I think, going to be coming around the time your baby will
Yeah.
be born. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking from a little different shift of like, okay, now all of a sudden, ooh, I want to be able to
Mm,
have all the extra fuel and energy to enjoy the family and contribute to the young family that's starting and keep my energy up basically and live a long time.
mhm,
Because I had children later than my parents did, and my children are having children later. So I've got to be useful at an older age.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so some things that I've found this last year that I've worked on, to your point about actual things that you can, what did you call it?
Like superficial self-care versus,
Yes.
yeah.
So excuse me. I have found that for sure. I've done a lot of the work on sleep. I'm not saying I'm there yet, but all of Andrew Huberman's work, there's so many people trying to help us get better sleep. Staying consistent with the wake up time and then sleep time and getting out of the artificial light a good hour before bed, staying away from screens, getting up and get sunlight on your in your eyes as early as you can,
Mhm,
holding off on caffeine for an hour to an hour and a half if you're going to drink caffeine.
mhm.
Um, Doing some practices towards bedtime that help the brain shut down instead of ramp up, because that's like free entertainment time for me. I haven't had time to listen to what I want to listen to. I'm going to put on a podcast in the background while I get ready for bed.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of those shifts, that's the kind of stuff we talk about in my practice for people. And I'm not here to be their health coach, but these are just natural topics and
Yeah.
things people are thinking of. And
Mhm,
so I think for young moms, and young dads, everybody has to figure out the right balance. But
mhm.
if you just go like kind of with the wind, all the forces of the world are going to creep in and take over unless you take control to a certain extent of how you're going to put your priorities and where you're going to spend your time.
Yeah.
And I'm
And
not.
and
Mhm.
something to expand on too is I think there's a really good, he's a psychiatrist. His name's Dr. Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've
Mm-hmm.
heard of him. Yeah, he's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he has a book, but it's called The Myth of Normal. And the whole
Okay.
premise, I've heard him speak on this. You guys can find him on podcasts too.
Mm-hmm.
But his big thing is the myth of normal. Just because
Mm-hmm.
he is normal doesn't mean
Right.
it's healthy or doesn't mean it's good. And we see that a lot. One of his examples is if you have a culture in a petri dish, and
Mm-hmm.
if it's all virus, right? Or if it's all sick,
Mm-hmm.
let's say that. If every bacteria in there is this thriving illness, then you would document it in science as normal because it's
Mm-hmm.
all the same.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's good. And I love
Yeah.
that example because a lot of these things, they are harder to have the discipline with, and they are harder to kind of go against our normal society. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, our normal society is not healthy. Our normal society,
Mm-hmm.
I think the current statistic is that in the US, over 60% of people are on at least one medication.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you get into overweight, obesity, children that are medicated now, like the
Mm-hmm.
statistics are just mind-boggling when you really get into that. And I also think, kind of just going back into, like you said, at any life stage, like preparing for grandchildren or preparing for children now, for me,
Mm-hmm.
what are our goals? And again, tuning into like, what are your individual goals? Like,
Right.
if you want to lose weight, I have so many women that come to me,
Yeah.
all ages, and they want to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I think we tell ourselves that a lot of these women, too, I want to preface, are not overweight at all.
Right.
They're just not looking the way they want or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Also, just a side note, this is just funny. I was looking back at my old photos and I was like, I found this photo from when I was, I don't know, early 20s. And I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, I look so big in this photo. Now, 8 months pregnant. And I'm like, why did I think that
I know.
this
Isn't
photo?
that wild?
Yes.
You remember your self-perception at that time. I'm like, I'd give anything to look like that today.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was walking around feeling less than,
Yeah.
and
100%.
so yeah, some of it is just our own psychology around how we look.
Yeah. And that's where when they come to me and they say this, like, do you really want to lose weight? Or because another quote, this is I think Dr. Bradley Nelson, but he
Mm-hmm.
says, you cannot heal a body you hate. And I think that
Yeah.
one of the most profound quotes, especially with body image, especially with women, again,
Mm-hmm.
no matter the age, of if you are hating and loathing X, Y, and Z about your body, it is
Mm-hmm.
really hard to heal it.
Yeah.
And maybe that sounds woo-woo for some people, but I have seen this time and time again with kind of acceptance of different parts of them.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be amazed the health changes and the mind changes that happen physically
Mm-hmm.
too, of kind of once you reach that point. Um,
Yes.
but that being said, just kind of going off of that of like, what do you really want? Do you really want to lose weight, or do you
Mm-hmm.
just want to feel better about yourself? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's having a consistent workout routine twice
Right.
a week or 3 times a week. Um, and kind of just like asking those a little bit of those deeper questions of, depending on where you are in life, what is going to contribute the most to your overall well-being? Because
Mm-hmm.
again, going off of this preface of normal, just because everyone wants to be thin or everyone wants to
Mm-hmm.
fill in the blank doesn't mean that it's good, and doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that what they're doing, taking the supplement or fasting for, that's a whole nother topic, and it can have benefits, but it can also be detrimental to your health depending on where you
Mm-hmm.
are at. Um, and people jump on these bandwagons because
Mm-hmm.
they find this niche in social media where it's normal and
Right.
they do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's best for you.
Yeah.
I think that's just a really good reminder for us all to have in all different seasons
Mm-hmm.
of, really getting in tune and asking those questions of what is going to help me
Mm-hmm.
prepare for being a grandma, or prepare
Sure.
for, you know, I don't even know, college, going back to college and like feeling
Right.
you're an athlete or something like that.
starting a new phase of your career, or moving across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So many people have had huge life changes these past several years.
Yeah.
The pandemic and the way the world works now is different. So everybody's needing to adapt,
Yeah.
or if they want to stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you brought up Gabor Mate in his work, he's also talks a lot about trauma and
Mm-hmm.
people's history of trauma. His parents, I guess, were survivors of Nazi concentration camps. And so he has a long history of trauma that it's just been a focus of his as a psychologist. I don't know if he's a psychiatrist or psychologist, but
I'm not sure.
fascinating work. But this is probably a topic, a whole nother topic for a different talk. But that's one thing I find pretty consistent with the patients that come in is their oral health seems intricately connected oftentimes to past shame.
Interesting.
And somebody smarter than me would have to figure out why,
Mm-hmm.
but it's pretty darn consistent. And so that's where really having a holistic approach about the whole person and stepping through a process with them at their pace, helping them see gains early on in our process with what they can control, and feeling like they're in a safe space to accomplish new things in their oral health.
Yeah.
Um, Before you know it, that dynamic has been shifted immensely. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can just see it in people's being. They come in the office, they're lighter, they're brighter,
Mm-hmm.
they're not so contracted and scared and feeling ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
People hold so much shame around if their oral environment isn't super healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of these aspects of really starting to put your oral health back into the context of your whole body
Mm-hmm.
and your total health, your life balance, um, it's one very important part of the whole picture
Yeah. And
from my
honestly,
perspective.
that makes so much sense because I feel like your mouth, it is a little bit more vulnerable because
Sure.
you can hide everything else. Like your gut
Right.
health, nobody knows if you're walking around with in your gas.
Yeah.
Like they might,
Yeah.
but nobody knows if, like even if you have acne and these other things, like,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of ways to cover it up or kind of manipulate it where
Mm-hmm.
can't see it. But then that does make a ton of sense because when you are going in, I mean, a lot of things don't lie, right? But
Mm-hmm.
your teeth and your microbiome, it's really not able to lie. There's nothing,
Right.
you know. Um, so
And
that,
having a human that you don't know yet enter your body,
mhm,
um, it can be very daunting for some people who have had a history of any kind of emotional trauma.
yeah,
And in a way, I'm very humbled by the fact that I know this is I am going literally inside someone's body while they're completely conscious,
mhm,
and I'm looking closely, and then I'm probably going to fix some things.
mhm,
That is a big leap for some people to get into a place where they feel comfortable with that and can
mhm,
relax into it. But to me, it's part of their total health story. So then when they start feeling the impact and things are getting healthier there, it can roll into other parts of their life.
mhm,
And kind of on the easy side is when things start looking better and when their smile gets looking more healthy.
mhm.
Um, I don't know about you, but one of my favorite aspects of our work is just watching people and watching their energy ramp up and watching their
Yeah,
how they are living and working in their lives
they're confident.
improve
Yeah.
confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, the confidence component has been so awesome because we get confidence from holding ourselves to some part, right? If you want to
Mm-hmm.
exercise 3 times a week and you do, you can get such a confidence boost from that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if when you are taking care of yourself, and again, the real self-care of taking care of yourself is so fulfilling and it does have
Mm-hmm.
this ripple effect on, because honestly, when you're taking care of yourself, you're able to take care of others.
Exactly.
And that whether that's your family, coworkers, just speaking positively,
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I feel like that's been a theme that's come up for me in the last few years of
Hmm.
just, am I really mad at so and so, or am I hungry, or am I
Right.
just like even these simple things, or is this really been bothering me about them, or do I need to just like go to the gym or go for a walk or
Yeah.
and have an outlet? So yeah, I love that. I
Well, I'm
do,
thinking, yeah, we're kind of wrapping up.
yes.
I wonder, how do you feel like in this context of this talk? What are some things you have on your weekend plans for your self-care?
That's
Because
a
we're
great
right, we're
question.
on a Saturday morning
Yeah.
today to do our little talk.
Yeah, I think the big thing kind of going back to like the Instagram conversation has been boundaries of
Okay,
I've said no to a lot this weekend.
good for
uh,
you.
and
Hmm.
difficult.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even with friends. Like they're positive influences, they're positive people, but I have just felt at my end and
Hmm.
it's been the theme this week of just in real time, how can I care for myself? And it's saying no. And
Hmm.
really just not necessarily substituting that out with watching Netflix, but just getting things we need to be getting done and
Hmm.
also just resting. So yeah. Do you have
Well,
one for
you
the week?
are growing a human there, so I love
Yeah.
all of that. What a great nurturing thing. Um, I'm just looking at some of your quotes. I hope we can capture these. I want to keep them for myself. If you can't pick it, grow it, or kill it, it's probably not good for you. We are what we consume.
Yeah.
Pointed us to a great book. You can't heal a body you don't love. So
Mhm.
those are great takeaways.
Yeah. Some are
Um,
not original, but they're good.
well, yeah, you don't have to,
Yeah.
but you said them here and they're great. So
Yeah.
um, this weekend, I am going to get outside, even though it's yucky out, but I'm in my office all day, every day. So I've got to use the weekends to get outside. There's a couple parks in Denver I love to go for walks. And maybe
Fun.
this time I won't have earbuds in and listen to something. Maybe I'll just
Mm,
hear the birds and some other
good.
people and their little conversations.
Yeah.
Because I can multitask and think I'm doing the best thing in the world. And then it's probably not even a break in my stress. So,
Right. It is a challenge. Yeah, the silence is a
mhm.
challenge for sure. Well,
And yeah,
yeah,
big
and
one.
thank you guys for listening. I think this will be hopefully one of many. This was kind of the catalyst for our
Mm-hmm.
conversations. Obviously, we would love to do more topic specific.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also if any of you do have questions or things that you would like us to expand on from this conversation, please send us an email. We will, wherever we put this, we will have our emails and contact info attached.
Yes,
So
that's right. Well, how do people find you?
yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. It's Andi, Andi, and then underscore Samperi, my last name.
Mm-hmm.
And then my website as well as andisamperi.com. So you can always reach in contact there. But either way, yeah, I would love to hear from you guys. And then DI, do you want to share your contact info as well?
Yeah, pretty much across the board at website, Instagram, Facebook. It's Dr. Sharon Dickerson.
Nice.
You can find everything there. So thank you,
Perfect.
Andy. This has been delightful. And I love sharing ideas with you. Once you and I get talking, it's kind of like we could go on and on and on, but I
Yeah.
think it was a great way to start my day. And I hope that some other people can enjoy what we like talking about.
Yes, me too. Yeah, thanks so
All
much.
right. Take care.
Yeah, you
Bye.
too. Bye.